I'm sure you know him.
Yes, yes.
He talks about a Maybach on a pothole street in Accra. Maybach. Interesting. But it tells you how sometimes we don't live up to what supposedly we are. We are a country in distress, but apparently not everybody is in distress. But let's talk about the National Cathedral. That's where I want to start off from, especially because yesterday there was that conversation in Parliament. Abnosay Asari, Minister of State at the presidency, right, for finance, also read out
at the Ministry of Finance.
At the Ministry of Finance. What do you make of what she said? The 339 million Ghana cedis that so far have been pumped into that project and everything in between. I want you to start from there.
Yeah, so good morning to all our viewers and good morning to the team here. And let me commend all of you for the great job you're doing for God and country. This National Cathedral project, I have to be very honest and brutally frank with you, that it has epitomized the massive corruption, the lack of prioritization, the abysmal levels of policy formulation, the disrespect for the Ghanaian people, and the disregard for our laws. All of those ingredients are at play when you come to analyze this National Cathedral project. How come a project which was first presented to us as a private project, a personal pledge of the president, which would not require public funds? The president was emphatic. Indeed, when the president met the eminent clergy, the first time he constituted the board of trustees, he told them that they were not going to use public funds. They were going to raise resources from outside the exchequer, outside the public purse.
Yes, but it was also made mention that there would be seed funding.
Then you recall, I'll come to
mention was made of seed funding, which
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. That was much later. Then you recall that a citizen went to the apex court of the land, James Kwabena Bonfe, saying that this project will open the floodgates. Traditionalists are likely to ask for a national shrine. Muslims will ask for a national mosque because they all pay taxes. The Attorney General at the time, in his presentation in the courts, and we have all the court documents now, we have the judgments, they misled the judges, saying that, look, this cannot be seen as a national project per se, because the president has clarified it's a personal pledge. The only contribution the state is making is to provide land, and so this will not open the floodgates. Now, how did we move from no state resources then to seed capital? After they began to carry out amendments, when we had exposed the lack of sincerity, lack of candor with the claims that they will not use public funds, they then made a significant shift and said they are going to use minimum resources, very minimum, and that it will be just a seed fund.
Minimum is relative.
Good point. So that is why, on the floor of the House, if you check the Hansard, my good self, the Honorable Dr. Yeni, when we were debating the 2019 budget, we said that under our laws, under the Constitution of Ghana, you cannot just say that you are going to use seed fund and leave it so vacuous without specificity. There ought to be a figure. That seed fund you are talking about, your brilliant intervention that is relative, we made that point and we said, as lawmakers, we are required to know what the amount is, because every single project in the budget, that is the law. You must provide the specific amount. So we asked, up to now, are you aware that the government has not told us that seed fund what it will amount to. Meanwhile, remember that this project started, the first announcement, it started at $100 million. Recent documentations they've brought to us in Parliament, the project is now hovering around $450 million.
True, which is what we've heard as well.
Yes. So, what is the seed fund for this? Meanwhile...
But as members of Parliament, you didn't probe the matter enough to get down to it. That is where your duty as parliamentarians comes in. I can't go and push for that. As a media person, I can push maybe RTI and all that. We know how some of that has gone. We're still fighting some of these cases, Ghana Airport Company and others.
Yes.
That's where you, as members of Parliament, come in to hold leaders to account.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So do you admit it's a failure on your side then?
No, it's... Look, the government has been stonewalling from day one. You see, this is a project in honor of the Almighty. It's God's project. Should we even go through this hassle, this tussle, to get the government to be transparent? The Lord's project. If you can't be transparent, you can't be sincere, candid with the Lord's project. When we know in the Bible, people were stopped. You know, people like David, after God's own heart, were stopped because God said their hands are not clean. So it's not for you. Hold on. You know, the Lord's project. If everything about purity, about transparency, about cleanliness, holiness, should be associated with any project, it should be this project. Remember that even with the figures that have now emerged, I had to intercept documents between the Ministry of Finance and the Controller Accountant General to then reveal that on our blind side, without parliamentary approval, in violation of the 1992 Constitution, funds, public funds, are being released without parliamentary approval. And you recall,
are you referencing where Kenneth Oriata, there was that tussle in Parliament, and he made mention of the fact that he hadn't taken from the consolidated fund?
Yes.
And you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Is that what you're referencing?
Yes. So after my exposés, which then became one of the grounds for his removal, at the vote of censure committee hearings, that's when he tried to play clever by saying that he took funds out of the contingency vote. And for the contingency vote, you don't really require specific approvals. It's a lump sum. But you see, this project does not qualify in any way, if you read our Public Financial Management Act, as contingency. Contingency is something that is a happenstance. It's unpredictable, has just come upon you, you know. And he himself, the examples he cited at the vote of censure committee, talking about tournaments, and he says that when we were in power, we used the contingency vote for
the 2014 World Cup.
Black Star appearances. That is contingency because you don't know how well the team will perform. You don't know if the team will qualify to the next round, and they are winning bonuses. So it depends on if they will win or not.
I think those points, those have been flawed.
So those qualify the contingency. So you have a situation where this government has squandered, as we speak, $58.1 million. That's the 339 at the time, the exchange rate at the time.
You're not using the current exchange rate. You're using the past exchange
at the time these releases.
When specifically are you?
These releases were made. So between 2018 and 2021. Okay. So this is Ken Oforiate's own analysis that he presented to the vote of censure committee. $58.1 million. Now, this figure, are you aware that this figure leaves out many other expenditure items?
Like
so this $58.1 million is even misleading. It doesn't give you the full picture. For example, the cost of replacing the demolished structures, this figure does not address that. So
the structures around
the structures that
were demolished.
Yes.
I know the scholarship secretariat.
Yes,
for example,
I can give you the full list.
Some judges' quarters.
Yes.
Had to
so
be moved.
the judges' quarters,
moved.
the Judicial Training Institute, the Scholarship Secretariat, the Passport Head Office. Then you have bungalows for Shraj, Comsys IT firm. Their headquarters was demolished. Waterstone Realty apartment complex, was also demolished. Then the Malian ambassador's residence. Yesterday, in her response to one of our follow-up questions, she said that she hasn't put out a figure on compensation because they are largely government buildings. Again, that is not accurate. As we speak, we have spent millions of Ghana cedis relocating these judges temporarily, and we are now building new structures for the judges. I have seen a document from the Chief Justice's office, the former Chief Justice, Justice Eni Yeboah, where he requires $50 million to replace the Judicial Training Institute. That is not part of this figure. Then, as ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I also know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had to allocate 10 million Ghana cedis to replace the passport head office. That is not part of these 339 million Ghana cedis we are talking about. Then don't forget that under our diplomatic obligations, once the Malian ambassador's residence was demolished, we ought to replace it to prevent a diplomatic tiff or a diplomatic row. We have now found some land at airport residential area, and the Malians are waiting for their full compensation. That is not part of this 339 million. So by the time we are done, now don't forget that as we speak, there are a number of court cases. Some of the persons affected have gone to court. The recent one is the Waterstone Realty Apartment Complex court case, where they are seeking some $6 million in compensation because apparently the allocated land to them, anytime they have attempted to take possession, there are national security operatives there, if you read the court documents, preventing them from taking possession. And so after a year and a half, they were compelled to go to court to seek compensation. So by the time we put all of this compensation together, replacing the Judicial Training Institute, $50 million, judges whose bungalows must be replaced, the private firms, the Malian ambassador's residence, this $58 million will pale into insignificance. So the $58 million, we must understand that it cannot represent the full picture, the real impact. Then you need to also come into discussing this $58 million. Have we had value for money? In my series of exposés, I have pointed out how monies have ended up at the wrong places. Monies intended for this project, this 339 million. We probably would have found some succor, a little bit of respite, if these sums really went into the project. As we speak, a gentleman called Carrie Summers is in the United States of America with our $6 million out of this $58.1 million.
So what did this person do?
They say that it was commitment to him to go raise funds for us. As we speak, he has raised no funds. Best practice.
Let me ask you this to move the conversation forward.
Yeah,
some of these things you've said in the past.
So best practice is that he should have raised the funds and then he's given commission.
Right.
You know, then we haven't even talked about David Ajayi's. I mean,
and I knew you would go there.
Extremely inflationary prices.
And I've heard you say things like he should return sums of money, which I don't see happening. I don't know which laws you're going to be quoting on that. But I just want to find out from you. 339 million Ghana cedis, what you say is the equivalent of $58.1 million, pumped into this venture. Yeah. We still have what we have there, foundation. In fact, there's no foundation. It's a
pit, the world's most expensive pit, really.
At least what should have been the foundation has been dug. How do we get value for this money? And how are you, as members of parliament? I can't say if you come to power because, I mean, who knows what will happen? You may or may not come to power, your party. How do we retrieve these sums of money? How do we make it make sense to the ordinary taxpayer? I think that's where the conversation should be going.
Brilliant question.
What are you doing?
Brilliant question. I agree with you. And that is why my colleagues and I, more than a year ago, filed a motion in Parliament calling for a full-scale parliamentary inquiry. Because, you see, There are moving pieces. There are different puzzles. There are many, many angles to this. Many, many angles. Our colleagues on the majority side think that one parliamentary question, as they did yesterday on the cost, should settle the matter. And as they noticed, the minister had to run away from all our follow-up questions. For example, releasing funds without PPA approval. This project had not received approval from the Public Procurement Authority. The PPA responded to my RTI request on the 5th of July, 2022, and confirmed that there was no PPA approval to rebate the contractors on the site. So we need a full-scale parliamentary inquiry. That motion was admitted by the Speaker. We all debated.
There was no approval from the PPA?
Yes, there was no approval.
Public procurement?
Yes.
I see.
Yes. I'll show you the letter on the 5th of July,
Please
2022.
Please do. Go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Frank.
Do you have it here?
Yes, it should.
Can you show me now?
Yes, I would.
So we don't forget.
Yes, I'll let you have it. It's in my car. I'll let you have it. I left.
You don't have it here.
I left those, but it's within.
You have a
the premises.
stack of.
Yes, I have a lot
here,
of documents.
You don't have that.
These documents are all on the SNIT hotels. I left the
all
Cathedral documents in the car, but I'll let you have that. Just let the.
So later you promise to send it, share it with us.
Before the show ends, let the producer just go into my car and pick up those documents. So you will see when those documents arrive that the PPA said they have no records at all of this. I mean, shocking. And when I asked the minister yesterday, she said she now wants to go back to the office and check, how they release funds without PPA approval. So we need a parliamentary inquiry into this matter. Our colleagues who did not oppose this motion agreed with us. Then we got to the last stage, which is membership. How do we populate the committee? Who are those to serve on this committee? Would you believe that over a year, our colleagues are stonewalling? They are refusing to present members from their side who should serve on the committee. If you have followed proceedings, virtually every Friday after the reading of the business statement, I remind the House, I appeal to Mr. Speaker, that this matter is pending. We haven't delved into it. We haven't had the full-scale inquiry. Because you see...
So are you basically saying that without the collaboration or cooperation of the other side, your side in Parliament can do nothing? Is that what you're saying?
So, good question.
Just make it clear for me.
So, my last two reminders in the House, I have appealed to the Speaker that clearly seeing that our colleagues on the other side don't want to cooperate, let us have a one-sided, let's declare their conduct a boycott and have a one-sided probe. It is allowed.
What was the reaction of the Speaker?
The Speaker said he will have further consultation with leadership. He's clearly running out of patience. He's clearly running out of patience. Because you see, boycotts are part of the democratic tools. So if we declare what they are doing a boycott, we can go ahead. For example, when they said that in 2012, after the elections, so we entered 2013, they say they are the Supreme Court, so they will not recognize President Mahama and legitimize his actions. They didn't participate in the vetting at the Appointments Committee hearings. What we did was to proceed, and those ministers were sworn in. There was nothing illegal about it. It was a one-sided vetting of the ministers. So we can have a one-sided, and it will still be.
So that's what you're pushing for now?
Only a few days ago, we boycotted the continuous appointments because we are saying that we are tired of all this bloated, government. They went ahead and vetted the deputy trade minister nominee. So that's what we are pushing for now. Because when we have this inquiry, then we will know all of those people keeping our funds, because we know this.
So fine, you then know the moving, the moving parts. Right. This eighth Parliament is drawing to a close. Yeah. Are you sure you can achieve that? Just the final bit on that. Are you sure you can achieve that before
we have to look?
Wind down on the eighth Parliament?
It will be such a major dereliction, such a terrible letdown of the Ghanaian people if we don't achieve that.